Hello, everyone. Welcome back to MLM Recovery Room podcast, where we help you reclaim your lives after the devastation of multi-level marketing. And I'm Megan, as you all know. Today, I'm joined by my friend Alex Long, and he's a financial coach with Rave Financial Coaching. And we've actually known each other since we were 10 years old, I think. So,
Yeah.
um, but when I started this podcast, I wanted to make sure that I could have people on that can speak to the different things that, as former MLMers or those recovering, coming out of it, have gone through. Obviously, we've all had financial pillaging happen to us in multi-level marketing. That's no surprise. But I really wanted to be able to bring somebody on here who I know can speak to what it's like to have to come out of a financial hole. So, just to preface, there's no shame here. As some of you know, if you know my story, you know I lost six figures in Amway, and my husband lost probably close to the same. And, we're all taking time to recover in our own ways. And part of that is financially, because when our finances aren't in order, it can affect the rest of our lives. I'm really excited to have Alex on today. And thank you so much for joining me, Alex. And just want
Absolutely.
to have you talk a little bit about your expertise here to get us started.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me. I'm really excited to be here. My expertise comes largely from personal experience. I know we were just talking a little bit before we hit record, and I was telling you how, my wife and I, right before we got married, were realizing that we were like $65,000 in debt from our student loans. And I think I was telling you that I had implemented the ostrich method for the majority of my life and definitely throughout college as I was racking up those loans, which basically means I just stuck my head in the sand. I didn't think about it until finally I got that letter where I had to think about it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to set my payments on auto pay. They're small payments. I'm just going to stick my head back in the sand and forget about it again. Thankfully, my then fiance and now wife, Melissa, was like, that's not what we're doing. And she got real intentional, educated herself, and brought me in with her. And it started a whole trajectory of us learning about finances, learning about how to pay off debt, create a foundation of financial success, and really just build off of that for now the past 13 years of our marriage. And it's been one of the single best things that we ever have done in our entire life. And then since then, I've just kind of built off of my own experience, continued educating myself, and have found a lot of passion and fulfillment in helping other people get out of debt and start building that same type of foundation and setting themselves up for financial success as well.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I can tell you just from experience and what I know of the practices that were promoted in when I was in Amway, in the group that I was in, they would tell us a whole lot of different things, which we'll go through and I'll get your reaction on. But a lot of things that now in my 30s, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would never ever tell anybody that. So like if somebody were to come to you and say that they were, like say they lost $100,000 or so, and they could be like $40,000 in debt. Thankfully, I'm not that far.
Mhm.
But if they were to come to you and say that, what's like the first thing you would tell them to do?
So I think the most important thing, the most critical first step is to realize that your mindset around finances is paramount to anything else. And I think that it's a critical first step that most people overlook because they want to dig right into the numbers and like get a game plan into action. So I think it's developing a mindset, realizing that first and foremost, the situation you're in is not entirely your fault and it is your responsibility. Right. So it's like both ends of that. The unfortunate truth is that we just have not been well educated and given the correct tools to handle finances. And like our generation, I know you and I grew up together. We're both in our 30s, but I think it really is pervasive across all generations. And it's just our society in general. We're not given the tools and the education, the resources to understand how to manage our finances. And to me, it's one of the greatest deficits of like our society is not providing those tools to everyone to help them to get to where they need to be in.
Sure. Some of those tools that I know in when you and I were talking before that you were talking about creating a course potentially in the future. So are there things that people can go find to help them? Like, are there resources out there that would be helpful if somebody has like no idea how to approach any of this?
There are a lot of tools out there. With my clients, how I approach it, I've created a very comprehensive set of tools. So there's a lot of different budgeting apps and like debt snowballs. There's a lot of different programs. Like I think I mentioned to you that there was a point in time where Melissa and I utilized Dave Ramsey and his principles. There's a lot of different experts out there. I offer a monthly action plan to anyone for free. You can go onto my website and download that, and I can send you information. Anybody who wants to, they can download that and get that for free. But how I package it is that there's a monthly action plan, which is what a lot of people would refer to as a budget. But I differentiate it a little bit in that every month you know how much you're going to have coming in, and you assign every dollar a job, and you track exactly what that is, and then you know how much you have left. And what it does is it empowers you to put your money to work for how you want to. And the biggest difference, again, is just like a mindset shift from being restrictive to being empowering and saying you get to determine exactly what you want to do with the money that you have coming in your life.
Yeah, just if you could share maybe like your top 5 tools.
Okay. So I would say monthly action plan would be the top one. A debt snowball would be the next. Set a goals tracker would be another one. And then like a funds tracker to make sure you know if you have different funds in different areas. And then I'll say the fifth one, which might be the most important, is creating like a vision board for you. Cause I know I keep talking about mindset, but really understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing is really critical, because if you don't have the why and the understanding of what you're shooting for and working towards, then you're going to completely lose motivation. You're going to run out of steam and you're not going to get to the finish line.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to, for anybody recovering from an MLM, I know you heard vision board and it's like, that's like an immediate red flag. But I will say that that is actually a really powerful tool. I do know that just in other things that I've done. So you just go ahead and disassociate that from actual MLM practices, even though they manipulate it and have you use it and put, like Amway Diamond up on your vision board or whatever the level is. But it's something also that as visual people, and you may agree with this, Alex, like I have to have a visual of what I'm shooting for. Otherwise, I could forget. And I feel like millennials, especially, we have so many different hats. Some of us, like myself, are now caretakers for a family member, or, we have kids or pets or house or everything that we have going on. So it can be easy to forget what the things are that you want to do for yourself. And so
Yeah.
definitely disassociate vision boards with MLMs. But honestly, it doesn't have to carry that same stigma. Alex, I know, is not in an MLM and hasn't been. So, this is advice from outside of that realm.
Yeah. It's really powerful, and it's kind of funny that you brought up that there was a negative association with it, because that hasn't been my experience. I'm sure that you could use it in for like a negative thing, or that people, could encourage you to use it for something negative. But for me and for the people that I've worked with, it's been the single most powerful tool. I was talking about the different tools earlier, and what I kind of created, I call it the Atlas, because it's got multiple maps and different tools all included in it. And how I have it set up is the very first thing that it opens up to when you open that up is your vision board, to every single time remind you exactly what you're doing. Because the truth is there's like trade-offs, right? I don't like to use the word sacrifice, but you're going to say at different times, if you're working on your finances, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to opt not to eat out on maybe as much, or I'm going to opt not to do this. And then if it feels like you're just making sacrifices and sacrifices and you don't have that goal or you're not seeing that progress, then you're going to lose sight of it. You're going to stop. You're not going to follow through because it's not going to feel like it's worth it. But when you know and are constantly reminded what you're doing all this for, then it feels worth it and it feels worth the effort. And then you're going to follow through and make sure it happens.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely true. I have to see it. Otherwise, I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot that I thought that the other day.
And you're not alone. I think that's how most of us are wired for the most
Yeah,
part. Sure.
yeah. We have short attention spans sometimes, and it's okay if that's, if you do, it's just something to be worked on for sure. And one other thing you said, a little bit ago, Alex, about giving each dollar a job. Before we started recording, I was listening to a video where this guy was going up to different billionaires and like
Mhm.
asking how they got rich, what did they do? And more than one of them said that you have to give each dollar a job. Don't just let your cash sit there. It's got to work for you. So,
Yes.
there's a whole stigma within MLMs around building wealth.
Okay.
Obviously, everybody wants wealth, which is why most of us got into whatever MLM, but you can become jaded over time. Over the time that I was in, I was like, I've always wanted to run some kind of successful business, be that businesswoman who's just really on it. But then, that kind of dampened my fire. But then when I got out, I'm like, It's still there. I just need to harbor it and really nurse it back to health, so to speak.
Mm.
And so when we're trying to get back to the point where we do want to build wealth,
Mhm.
do you have any, like, tips for starting on that journey? Because obviously it's not overnight, it can take 5 to 10 years, but I would say most of us wanna be able to leave something to our children when that time comes, more than just, our CD collection, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the three kind of steps is I would start with mindset, and we can dig into more of what that looks like, and facilitating a mindset that allows you to build wealth. And then I think from there, you have to dig into your finances. And I call it assessing the mess because let's be honest, it's a mess for all of us, especially when we start. And then after you do that, you have to set a game plan into action for how you're going to go towards those goals, that mindset that you set up, how you're going to get from the mess that you're in right now and have actionable steps to move towards that. And so that's kind of how I approach it with all the different tools that I had mentioned before. But yeah, it's just creating that mindset, assessing the mess, and then putting a plan of action into place to move towards the goals that you want to reach.
Yeah, okay. And so for those of us who are thinking of, within a couple years, once we're completely out of debt,
Yeah.
investing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you work with your mentees on, or, like, kinda how would somebody get started and if they wanna go down that route?
Yeah. So when it comes to investing, there's a few different approaches you can take. And I will say that, like, I'm not an investment advisor. So I can't give like very specific investment advice or like, I can't take anyone's money and invest it for them. But what I try to do is, first of all, set up a foundation of, reducing your debt, building up some savings, giving yourself a little cushion. And then I give real general advice about, first of all, you want to max out all of your tax advantage accounts. Like if you are with an employer that has a 401k with a match, absolutely get that match. That's the best return that you can get on your dollar. From there, if you're talking about retirement, a Roth IRA, because your Roth is going to grow. And then once you retire and start pulling from that, you don't have to pay any taxes on that money. So that's a huge tax benefit, both okay and Roth IRA. And then from there, if you want to invest beyond that, opening up a separate brokerage account, say maybe you want to retire early, like before you could access that retirement, I would say then look into that. But regardless of which of those you're investing into, I would say just use something very simple like an S&P 500 mutual fund, that's not going to have, a really high rate. You can usually get those for like less than 0.5% that you're going to be paying on those. And the historical growth on like the S&P 500 is like 11%. Um, i- the experts that go out and you pay all kinds of money generally do not beat that return on a consistent annual basis. So keep it simple. Yeah, that that's the best advice I can give you.
Nice. Thank you. I'm sure that's definitely going to be helpful because I don't know the stat, but most people who have come out of an MLM are worse off financially. I
Yeah,
mean, that's just the actual statistic for this for the MLM side of things is that 99% of people lose money so that the top 1% can make money. So if you have those, bottom 99 percenters getting out, it's because, they lost money.
yeah.
And so yeah, that is very helpful, and I do wanna
Yeah.
encourage anybody too, if you're kind of scared about all of this, just do like, this is what I'm doing, I'm trying to just educate myself because I don't know about investing, like, very much. I only know, like, what I hear other people saying because some of those terms can be so, like, overwhelming, you're just like, "I have no idea about this."
Yeah.
But just dip your toe in the pool, so to speak, and kinda get yourself familiar with different topics and just go from there. Like, knowledge is power. That's the thing that,
Yeah.
like, no matter what we've been through, they can't take our knowledge away.
And I will say, like, because everything I kind of said was stuff that you can do on your own with the 401k, the Roth, and then opening up your own brokerage account. And you can do all that. You can invest in like an S&P 500 mutual fund and you can be very successful. If that still feels like really overwhelming and scary and terrifying, then hire a financial advisor. And you will pay a little bit more, but it will be so much better than sitting on the sidelines scared and not taking action at all. So, absolutely, if you have a little intrepidation or something and you need help, reach out to one of those people. They'll be more than willing to help set you up. You just got to take action and start doing it.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and in MLMs, like, most of us, at least Amway is, like, the Mac Daddy grandfather of all of them. And they're big on the cult-like thing, but there are some things that came from it that are really good, though. And one of the things is to just do it, just take action on things
Yeah.
instead of waiting. And, I mean, because we just don't know not to be morbid, we just don't know how long we have. We have to do what we know we need to do. Because if you wait till you're ready, you're just gonna wait till you're never
Yeah.
gonna do it, so
That the fear of getting started can be the
mhm.
single biggest, deterrent or keeping you from the wealth and the life that you want to live for sure. Yeah. Take
Yeah,
action.
exactly. Well, that's great advice. I appreciate that. And I just want to take a second to encourage anybody who is recovering. If you have any shame, just definitely let that go. There are so many of us that um, are sharing our stories that are here to support you. For a long time, when I was in Amway, I was acting like I already had it all figured out. I was acting like my finances were perfect and I was, living the life. But in reality, there were weeks where all I could eat was rice because I put so much money into buying products. Or I drove a beat up car that I would park further away so people didn't see that when I would go to a meeting and, like show the plan because I didn't want them to think that I couldn't afford different things. And so there's that whole like facade you're putting on, which is exhausting in itself. But then you get home and you realize, well, shoot, am I going to buy groceries or pay the electric bill?
Yeah.
I literally cried myself to sleep some nights because at the time I was supporting somebody else. My mom wasn't able to work. So I was supporting her while, she's all good now. But, when you have not it's not just yourself, but if say you have a kid or you have somebody that is relying on you, I mean, that's a heavy burden anyway, but, like, women especially, we take it personally, like, "I did something wrong with this," and I know guys are a little more like, "I'll just go figure it out," but, I'm sure all of us at some point, whether we've had those moments, we've faced that time where it's like, you feel so ashamed. So, Alex, can you speak to kind of the shame feeling of, like, wherever people are when they're first getting started and trying to help themselves? Are there things that I don't know if you and Melissa face that, but any thoughts that you have on that would be great.
Yeah, I think that it's a huge component. And I think that it kind of goes back to what we just mentioned, which is I think the shame is kind of tied to fear. And like both of those things working together just kind of keep people from taking action and doing anything. I think it's one of the biggest difficulties that I have when I'm reaching out to people and wanting to kind of say, hey, like, this is how you do it. Come work with me. Because people just don't want to admit, especially when it comes to money. For whatever reason, there's all these different things around money and how we're all supposed to have it figured out, which, by the way, like, no one does. But we all think that we're all supposed to know. And so if we admit that we don't, then we are like the one person who doesn't know. And that's so shameful. And we're messed up, when the reality of it is we're all just kind of trying to figure it out, and as we go. I know one of my recent clients started working with me a little while after a divorce, and she had said that she was pretty good with her money beforehand, but her husband had like kind of gotten them into this hole, and she was just like completely overwhelmed and ashamed because she was like, this is not how I normally am. And we got in this together. um and I don't know what to do, and I feel stupid, and like all these stories that she was telling herself about why who she was because she was in this situation. And she turned out to be one of my most successful clients to this date. She ended up working with me for like over 2 years, and just recently we were just like texting back and forth, and she was like, Alex, she's like, I think I'm done. She's like, I think you coached me out of it. She's like, I'm really sorry. I was like, no, this is awesome. This is exactly what I want to hear. This is what we work for. Like, you're
Yeah.
definitely ready. I've been waiting for this for like months now. Like, you're definitely there. And she had gotten out of debt. She built up more of an emergency fund than she had had in 5 years. She had started investing again. And I think the biggest thing for me was like, she just had a newfound sense of confidence in herself and her ability, seeing the transition from the shame to the confidence is like the single most exciting thing that I ever get to experience. And it's in there in most of us. It's not a unique thing to anybody that's listening. Feel it. So yeah,
Sure. And that's good to know, because I think that once we get in our own heads, we think that we're just going to be judged for
yeah, yeah,
being less than in
absolutely.
some way. And honestly, like, I'm my own harshest critic, and that's just how everybody is.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stigma around money, and there's this idea that we should just all know it, and none of us do. And
Right.
the shame is real. And so
Yeah.
it's a difficult hurdle to overcome, but once you do, it's a game changer.
That's awesome. I mean, if we were all that good with money, we wouldn't have financial coaches.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Then I would be completely
yeah.
unneeded for sure, which hopefully one day. I think that's a long way off, unfortunately, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I will say that, you and I as millennials, we were sold the American dream by usually boomer or Gen X parents who, my mom doesn't do this to me, and your mom is great. I know that. So I don't think she would do this to you, but be like, you just need to work harder. That's all it is. And, if you're like in your mid-30s and you don't own a house yet, like, oh, it's because you just haven't focused. And it's like, well, actually, feels like everything is stacked against us. And then
yeah,
a lot of us got involved in an organization that we didn't know would then financially pillage us. So
yeah,
I say that to say that in my experience with trying to recruit Gen Z when I was in Amway, they did not bite. It's like they just knew, like, no,
interesting.
my parents, and usually they have Gen X or elder millennial parents who went through the crap with this and like, no, I'm not
Okay.
taking that bait. And so, even Amway sales have gone down consistently over the last several years, which is, I don't usually root for anyone's demise, but I will make an exception for that because I just don't believe that they're set out to actually
Yeah,
help people. So, when you have an organization seemingly, allegedly getting rich off of the demise of other people, then I'm like, I can't stand for that. But seeing how Gen Z is not taking the bait just makes me so happy.
yeah. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
then
heading in the right direction.
definitely. So, like, when Gen Alpha starts to get old enough to get involved in things, I can't wait to see what happens there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's yeah.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to see. I don't know. My oldest is 9. I don't even know what generation that puts him in, but yeah, I have no idea. It's hard for me to imagine what the world's gonna look like, when he is coming of age like I was, when I was, 20 or so years ago, but, it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see for sure.
definitely.
Yeah,
We were talking about how, like, we graduated 20 years ago. I feel like the numbers kind of come quicker and, the world changes much faster than it used to. So
it does.
the knowledge that we had is far outdated. It feels like it's as outdated as like something from the 1970s would be to our time
Yeah,
frame. But
yeah,
it just changes so much quicker now that,
yeah.
you know,
It's
with
exponential.
exactly. So, with that in mind, I believe that the advice that you gave is really going to stand the test of time because it's not like, oh, let's follow this financial trend. It's more of like habits and practice, which is really the basis for what most of us are going to need to recover.
Absolutely. It's developing that mindset. It's understanding what actually matters to you in your life and then like prioritizing your money to follow suit with what you actually care most about and letting those things that maybe society says is important, but to you really is not important and not allocating your money to those things and really focusing it towards the things that are important to you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that sounds simple, right? It kind of is. It's simple in theory, but it's not easy to execute.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But my experience is that nothing worth it is going to be that easy. So, the whole recovery process from MLMs, like I can really speak to that. It's so up and down. You're grieving, yes, you grieve the money that you lost, like, but the whole emotional component is just its own beast. And because
I can imagine.
for most of us, for most women, I can say this for women that, our emotions are tied to pretty much everything in life. And it's actually a challenge to take a look at things pragmatically. So I've had to do that because I'm like, I know for me, if I'm going to follow my emotions, then one day I'm going to be so happy that I'm out. The next I'm going to be so upset that I went through it and just all these things.
Well, and I think to jump off from that, and I think that's why we kind of keep going back to certain things, but like having something like a vision board, or at least if you don't have that, just having very clear what your top priorities in life are,
Yeah.
so that when stuff kind of changes or shifts, you kind of have like a North Star to be like, this is what I care most about. This is the direction that I'm heading, and everything else in my life is moving towards these things because they're what I care about and most passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. That makes perfect sense. So, I would like to present you with some advice that I got, not from my friend who sponsored me, who you also know him, but from further
Hmm.
up in our upline. Advice that was shared with us on a wide scale that kind of told us what to do with our finances. So, they would in conferences, they would err away from saying any kind of advice. It was more like talk to your upline. And your upline is basically the people who are either sponsored you or up above them, whoever got you involved in the business.
Hmm.
So they got
Sure.
credit for you doing more volume, for buying more products, for selling more products. Now,
Hmm.
since you don't come from the MLM world, you probably can tell this, but most MLM products don't sell at the rate that they say they do. And what ends up
Sure.
happening is the reps are buying their products. So in
Yeah.
Amway, there's this level of like you're called a core 300, and meaning like if you're core, that means you are really you're bought in, you are committed, you are going to win, and you're setting yourself up to then build a team and be
Sure.
successful, quote unquote. So, because most of the products did not sell, we were
Hmm.
actually told to do something that the FTC had come out with this rule back in 1979 to have 70% of your products being sold to come from customer sales. Now, Amway didn't actually start enforcing that until like 2021. So I think there was some heat from the FTC. That's another story. I basically in a training, I remember being told to come up with a business name. It doesn't have to be registered with any state or anything. It basically was just a
Okay.
place filler on Amway.com. And then you somehow come up with a phone number. And once you have that, then you can report those sales of things that you purchased
Yeah.
as having come from whatever fictitious business that you created. So I don't know if, you kind of know about the implications of what might be tax fraud, what might be business fraud. Obviously, that's not good. But as aside from that, they would tell us that anything that we had to do anything that we could do to make our goal happen. And the goal was
Yeah.
not around sponsoring necessarily unless it meant that the people that you sponsor would be able to buy more products. But what the advice comes down to is that we would be told to put bills off. So like I remember literally putting off my electric
Wow.
bill. I remember basically being told to borrow money from family to pay rent so that I could buy more products. I also remember
Yeah.
being told to take out a loan with the collateral being this lemon of a car that I had at the time. And it was one of those high interest payday loans where, if you don't pay, like make your payments every week, they're going to come get your car.
Probably crushing you with interest as well.
Exactly. So there are
Yeah.
probably more things that we were told, but that's just some of the most heinous advice that I've ever received. So when you hear that, what's going on in your financial coach brain? Are there red flags coming up?
I mean, right and left, right? Obviously. I think, I don't know. There was almost too many things there for me to even fully unpack. But I think
Yeah.
boiling it down, it just comes down to like a very obvious situation where the company does not have your best interest in mind when they're telling you to over leverage yourself that is very clearly going to put you in a poor financial situation. I don't know. Like it hits me right here. It like hurts my heart to hear that it's like a predatorial approach. And it goes back to the shame that we were talking about earlier cuz at least the way that I'm interpreting it, it's like if you're not over leveraging yourself to this extent, then you are not invested in this company. You are not doing your part in this organization, and you should be ashamed for not doing that. And that to me is, I don't know, I wasn't a part of that, but it hurts me to hear that that's what's going on. Like I kind of knew, but yeah, it's predatory, and that it kind of breaks my heart. I hate
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there are a lot of people who will run when they hear that kind of stuff. There are some that just think, well, this is the price of success. And, I'm thankful that my friend who told me about the business, who you also know isn't in a bad spot financially. But there are people like you hear horror stories of people who have lost their houses and all kinds of different things like that. I mean, gambling has a better success rate than being in multi-level marketing, which should tell you something.
That
So,
says a lot,
yeah.
honestly. Yeah. Because the
So
house always wins.
exactly, exactly, and
Yeah.
that's exactly how it
Yeah.
is with multi-level marketing. Not saying any company names, but yeah. Okay,
For
so, we've kinda talked about how to come out from under that sort of thing. I know we can all hear different things about what goes on, but then, it really takes some of us who have been there to explain the depth of it, and I've been out for 2.5 years now. Very, very grateful for that, but I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but when you're having to look
Yeah.
for that light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you guys have had some dark financial moments where you had to just keep your eyes on that. Is really keeping your eyes on
Mhm.
the priority the biggest thing that you can do in that kind of scenario?
That is a huge part of it. I think in addition to that, creating a game plan. I talked about my monthly action plans. So you kind of like you have your goal, you know what you want, and then you break it down into kind of like more actionable, smaller steps. And then from there, I always break it down into, a monthly action plan. So every single month, you're working towards one of those steps. And then the final thing that I would add to it is tracking it. So I do it within that monthly action plan, but then also tracking your progress and your goals. Because without that, it's great to have the goal and it's great to have the plan. But if you can't see the progress that you're making, then it makes it really hard to continue the grind day in and day out, month in and month out. Um, Without seeing the progress. But when you can see like, okay, I was $60,000 in debt and this still kind of sucks, but now I'm only $30,000 in debt. And, I only have $500 in my savings right now, but 2 months ago I was at negative, and like you can visually see the progress that you're making. It makes a huge difference because you might not otherwise be like feeling the relief immediately. So making sure you have a way of seeing the progress that you're making is.
Sure. For me, that'd be like colorful stickers, but not everybody's is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways to track it. I'm a guy, and so my approach tends to be like analytical and
Mhm.
spreadsheets and like stuff like that. But any way that like resonates with you, where you can see the progress from where you were to where you are now and shows you where you're going, I'm
Yeah,
all for it.
that's wonderful. Well, I think that's some great advice. Before we kind of wrap up, is there anything else on your mind that you feel like would benefit the audience?
Ooh, that's a hard hitter. I think just like believe in yourself and just know that you can do it. I've been in a spot where I didn't think that I could. I've seen a lot of other people that were in spots that didn't think that they could or didn't think that they deserved it or were too ashamed to, admit it and work on it. But know that you deserve it, you're worth it, and you're capable, and just like believe in those three things and then take action on it. I think if you do those things, I think you got a really good chance of being really successful.
That's wonderful. I would
Yeah.
agree. Alex, if anybody is interested in your free resource or actually scheduling some coaching with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is to just hop on ravefc.com. That stands for Rave Financial Coaching. All the links to everything is on there. You'll be able to see where you can get the free monthly action plan. There's also a link on there to ask me any questions you have, reach out. It gives a little information about the program that I have called Thrive, and what my coaching looks like. So that's probably the easiest place to find everything you need to know.
Perfect. I will go ahead and link that in the show notes for everybody. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up today?
So I really appreciate you
Okay.
having me on. This has been great.
Yeah,
I just hope that this resonates with some people and that they're able to, whether they reach out to me or to somebody else, or they just make a conscious decision to make that commitment and that turn, that it helps them to turn some things around and help build a more successful financial future.
for sure. Well, I really appreciate your time, Alex. I'm sure that others will say the same. And I would love to have you on some time again in the future if we have more to talk about. But thank you so much, everybody, for your time today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or whatever, you are more than welcome to DM me on Instagram. It's MLM Recovery Room Podcast. And if you want to reach out by email, it's MLM Recovery Room Podcast at gmail.com. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day.